Hello, friends. Today I'll be reading I Survived the San Francisco Earthquake, 1906, chapters 1 through 4. Chapter 1, April 18, 1906. Ricken Hall, 5:12 a.m., San Francisco, California. The sky was still dark when the ground began to shake. Most people in San Francisco were still sleeping. Just a few were awake. Shopkeepers arranged their stores, getting ready for the day. Carriage drivers fed their horses, newsboys ran down the sidewalk to pick up their newspapers to sell, and 11-year-old Leo Ross was in a broken-down building high on Ricken Hill. When the rumbling started, Leo thought it might be thunder. He had no idea that deep below the city, two gigantic pieces of earth were pushing past each other. Powerful shocks were exploding through the underground layers of dirt and rock. All across the city, streets ripped open, buildings swayed, walls crumbled, and houses came crashing down. Broken glass, hunks of wood, and piles of bricks tumbled into the streets. Leo stood in shock as the floor beneath him rose and fell like ocean waves. Hunks of plaster hit him on the head, windows shattered, spraying glass all around. He tried to scream, but his throat was covered with dust. He wanted to run, but he couldn't even stand. The shaking was too hard, and then there was a sound like an explosion. The ceiling above his head burst open. A brick hit him, smack, on the back. And then another thud hit him on the shoulder. Crash! Dozens of bricks poured down. Leo fell to the floor and curled into a ball. The bricks kept coming, raining down. He couldn't see. He couldn't breathe. Soon he would be buried alive. Chapter 2, 20 hours earlier. President Roosevelt is coming to town, Leo shouted. Read all about it. Leo was standing on the corner selling the morning's newspaper. The sidewalk was crowded with men rushing to work. They barely slowed down as they handed Leo their nickels and grabbed their newspaper from his hand. It was barely 7 in the morning, and Leo had sold almost all of his papers. He jingled his pockets, which were heavy with coins. He thought about the French roll he'd buy for breakfast, and maybe even some cold milk to wash it down with. He smiled to himself. Papa would have been proud of him. Leo patted his right trouser pocket and felt the gold nugget that he always kept with him. It didn't look like much, kind of like a chewed up yellow rock, but it was worth a fortune, Leo knew. Probably he could get more money from it than he earned in months of selling papers. But he'd rather sell his heart than his gold nugget. Leo's grandfather had found it in a riverbed east of here during the gold rush. He handed it down to his papa, who carried it with him everywhere. Grandpop got sick and died before Leo was born, but Papa kept him alive through the stories he'd tell to Leo. Each night, when Papa was putting Leo to bed, he'd take out the gold nugget. Leo would hold it tight in his hand as Papa told tales of Grandpop's adventures, crossing across America all alone in a creaky old wagon, almost getting eaten by a giant grizzly in the Rocky Mountains, surviving a forest fire in the Sierras, living in San Francisco when it was just a bunch of rickety houses in the mud. You're just like your grandpop, Papa always said. I see it in your eyes. You've got his good luck. You've got his guts. Something remarkable is going to happen to you. I can feel it, can't you? And the way Papa would look at him with shining eyes, Leo did feel it. These past few months since the fever took Papa away, there had been days when sadness would control and surround Leo, a feeling as cold and gray as the San Francisco fog. He'd feel scarred and very alone. He'd miss Papa so bad, his whole body would hurt. But then he would think about his grandpop, who had made it from New Hampshire to California all by himself when he was just 16 years old. And he'd hear Papa's voice in his mind, bright and clear, telling him that he was lucky and brave, and that something remarkable was going to happen to him. Papa's voice was loud and clear on this sunny day. Or it was, until Leo finished selling papers. He was walking down an alley cutting through to Market Street. Somehow he didn't notice the two boys who had crept up behind him. Next thing Leo knew, he'd been smashed against a brick wall and blood was gushing out of his nose. Chapter 3. "Hand it over," said a raspy voice. Leo didn't have to see the face to know who he's talking to. It was Fletch Sykes, the most brutal thief in the neighborhood. The other kid had to be Wilkie Barnes, a giant of a boy who went everywhere Fletch did. When Fletch was just 5 years old, the story went, he'd been attacked by a pack of stray dogs. He survived, but one of the dogs had bit his throat. The bite ruined his voice and turned Fletch vicious. Fletch and Wilkie didn't just steal food and pickpockets. Sometimes they'd beat people up just for fun. A few months ago, they had been caught by the police and sent to a work farm up north. Leo had heard a rumor that they had escaped. He'd heard that they were hiding out in an old abandoned saloon on Rickon Hill. And now here they were, back to their old vicious tricks. "You can take my money," Leo said, trying not to sound terrified as he felt. "We don't want your money." The kid was a monster. He had to weigh almost 300 pounds, with smooth, chubby cheeks like a baby. A baby with a steel fist. "What do you want?" Leo asked, his knees shaking. "You know," Fletcher growled. Leo's heart stopped. Of course he knew. Somehow he had found out about Leo's gold nugget, but how? Leo hadn't told a soul about it except Morris, that little pest of a kid who buzzed around Leo like a fly. Leo had showed him the gold a few weeks ago. He must have blabbed about it to the kids on the street, and the story had gotten back to Fletch and Wilkie. Fletch pushed Leo's face harder into the wall. The bones of Leo's cheek felt like they would crack, like the egg of a shell. "Take my money," Leo said again. "I have more than $1. Take it all." "We will," Fletch said, with a rasping laugh, "but we want the gold too. Hand it over." It was Papa's voice in Leo's head. Leo knew there was no way he could fight these guys, no way to outrun them. Wilkie was the fastest kid in the neighborhood. But that gold had been Papa's prized possession. Leo couldn't just give it up. "No," Leo said, summoning all of his strength. He rolled around and broke free from Fletch's grip. He made it about 3 steps before Wilkie caught him by the back of the shirt and threw him onto the ground. Slam! Leo landed hard, biting his tongue. "Hand it over," Fletch shouted in his creepy, strangled voice. "No," Leo said again. What happened next took only a minute. Wilkie picked Leo up by the shirt, holding him in the air, as Fletch emptied Leo's pockets. Then Wilkie threw him into a pile of garbage. The two goons walked away laughing. Blood dribbled from Leo's mouth. His head throbbed. But the worst was the searing pain from somewhere deep inside, like something had been ripped out of him. His gold was gone. Chapter 4. Leo had no idea how much time had passed, and then a voice calling his name woke him up from his daze. "Papa! Leo! Leo Ross, where are you?" Leo groaned to himself. Morris. Why did that kid constantly pester him? From the first day they'd met, Morris had acted like they were long-lost brothers. They both lived in the same boarding house. Leo by himself in a tiny basement room. Morris upstairs with his uncle, a sweaty man with a huge stomach, who yelled at the little girls when they played dolls on the boarding house steps. Every day when Leo got home, Morris was waiting for him at the front door. The kid worked at a grocery store, but he spent every spare second at the public library. He always had some new fact to share with Leo. Leo, did you know that the rat lives under the front steps? Did you know its Latin name is Rattus ratus? Leo, did you know that before this neighborhood used to be a swamp? They filled it with garbage and old wood and then built these buildings. Leo, did you know that San Francisco Library has 1 million books? In Leo's heart, he knew that Morris just wanted to be pals, but Leo didn't need any friends. He especially didn't need a friend like Morris, a skinny twerp who didn't know when to shut up. A kid like that wouldn't do Leo any good. What had Leo been thinking when he showed Morris his gold? He thought back to that night a few weeks ago when Leo had seen Morris sitting alone on the steps of the cigar store near their boarding house. At first, Leo figured he could sneak by and escape Morris for one day, but something was wrong with the kid, and Leo couldn't walk by he just couldn't walk by without seeing what it was. It took Leo some time to get Morris to spit out what was wrong, that his uncle was hardly ever home, that he gambled all of his money away, including the few dimes a day Morris earned at the market. I have to get out of here, Morris said. My ma has cousins in New York City. I met them once. You'd love them, Leo. They're both teachers. They said that I could go to their school. They always said I was welcome there any time. Why don't you just go? Leo said. Then finally Leo could live in peace. How? Morris said. I don't have the money to get on a train. My uncle just laughs when I mention it. I'm trapped here. There was no cheering Morris up until Leo reached into his pocket and took out his gold and handed it to Morris, like Papa used to hand it to him. Morris' eyes almost popped out of his head. Leo told him about Grandpop and how people laugh when he used to talk about one day crossing the wild country by himself. Of course, Leo knew that Morris was nothing like Grandpop, but the story worked like a charm. What Morris was doing out on the streets looking for him now, couldn't he mind his own business for one day? Morris was the reason he just lost his gold to Fletch and Wilkie. The reason he was lying, bleeding in the alley. Morris was the last person Leo wanted to see. Leo kept quiet, hoping that Morris would move along. But no, Morris kept at it. And suddenly there he was, crouched down next to Leo. I've been looking everywhere for you, he said. I knew something must have happened. Morris took out a handkerchief and started wiping the caked blood from Leo's face. Whoever did this to you, Morris fumed, I swear I will get them. Leo would have laughed, but his jaw was too sore. It was Fletch Sykes and Willie Barnes, Leo mumbled. They stole my gold. Morris gasped. You're the only person who knew about it, Leo added. I didn't tell Fletch Sykes about your gold, Morris said. But you told someone, right? Leo said. Morris's shoulders slumped. I might have mentioned it to some kids at the market, he said. It was such a great story, and it got their attention. Leo shook his head. The kid was so desperate for friends, he'd spilled Leo's most important secret. He should clobber him. But no person could look sorrier than Morris looked now. Leo sighed. Being mad at Morris wasn't going to get his gold back. He let Morris help him stand up. Together they made their way to the boarding house. Morris jabbered the entire way. I'm going to help you get that gold back, he said as they stepped through the front door. It will be sold by tomorrow, Leo said. Morris frowned. I know, Morris said. That's why we have to get it back tonight. We? Leo said. Now he had to laugh. Morris really thought he stood a chance next to Fletch and Wilkie. Of course they won't just give it back, Morris said, ignoring Leo's questions. We have to trick them somehow. Leo looked at Morris, and right there and then, Morris didn't look like a skinny little twerp. There was a look on his face, a thoughtful and stubborn kind of look that reminded Leo of the way that President Roosevelt appeared on the front page of today's paper. The only thing missing was the bushy mustache. But what did Morris really know about the world? There were no books in the library about kids like Fletch and Wilkie. Leo thanked Morris, and before Morris said another word, Leo hurried down to his tiny basement room, slamming the door behind him.